It is my pleasure now to introduce Charlie Kim, and he is the founder and CEO of Next Jump. Anybody heard of Next Jump? Me either. The New York Times describes it as a bellwether for the next generation of e-commerce. Now, I have to confess that at my age, I don't know from e-commerce. I don't tweet, I don't Facebook. Lots of things I don't do, but those are the only things I'll confess to. So what he's going to do is tell us where he's going with his company. I hope he'll tell us what it does. And but what I was intrigued about in reading about him is it's not just technology that he's up to. What he's really up to is culture building. And I am a great believer in culture is everything. If you have a bad one, you're dead in the water. And if you have a good one, you have tons of opportunity. So with no further ado, I will introduce you to Charlie Kim.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you. All right, so hopefully everyone's well-fed and well-hydrated. So I'm here to talk less about technology. Actually, I'm a CEO of a technology company. Know less about technology, but know a ton about culture and the importance of building a culture of engagement. Now, I know the symposium's about engagement, about how to motivate people, how to motivate employees, and I want to talk about how culture is probably the single most important element of this. The notion of building a system, the notion of building an environment where it is harder to do the wrong thing. It is easier to do what is right if you set it up correctly. And so, let me give you a little context, because the world has changed quite a bit over the years, starting way back from the caveman days to the agricultural days, the manufacturing, and today's world, which is the information age. Back in the days of agriculture, the most important aspects of the system had to do with fertilizer, had to do with getting rain, sunshine. Then you move on to manufacturing, where 90% of the country made a living working for a factory, or working in a factory. The most important elements of the system include cleanliness, include oil, ways to keep the machinery running correctly. And the difference between machines and people is that when you make a change in machines, you can see the impact almost immediately. Especially being in tech, whether it's a mobile app or a website, you make a change, you can see the change in revenue and traffic almost instantly. Well, people's a little different. And the world's shifting, and I think it's said in around 15 years, 90% of this country will make a living in some information capacity. And so when you think of people and what drives people, the system, the environment, the word that comes to mind always is culture. Now, culture is spoken about, talked about so much, yet I would argue most people have no clue what it really means. It's no different than going into someone's family dinner at Thanksgiving. And you walk in and you say, wow, this family feels really warm. Or you walk into some other family and you say that this family feels a little cold or odd. It's hard to describe what culture is, but it's definitely there. Now, I'm here to talk about culture, and given that this is focused on health, specifically we'll speak more about the health aspects of fitness and nutrition and what we've done in the company, integrating that even into mental and emotional development. Yet, you have to ask yourself the question, why would it come out of technology? Why not Nike? Why not Whole Foods? Why not some clinic? That's where the greatest innovation in health for fitness as well as nutrition should come. But I'm going to make an argument that it should come out of technology. And there's many reasons why the greatest innovations in culture, as well as even in physical fitness and nutrition, will come out of technology. A place where drinking Mountain Dew and Red Bulls is like staple nutrition for engineers. Eating candy bars, eating junk food for energy, sugar highs, this is a typical engineer never having been in a gym. And yet, why this innovation occurs out of technology is this. It's because of the constraint. When you look at any great innovation that ever occurs, anyone who has a ton of money, a ton of capital, a ton of resources, usually will not innovate. Those who are constrained, who have the greatest constraints, they will innovate to survive. They will innovate because you have to innovate. So in the field of human capital, the age we're in of information, where people are the single most valuable asset, technology engineers, typically very young, 21 years old, coming out of college, undergrad, some grad students, are the hardest people to hire and then to retain. To give you a data point, last year alone, there were 3 million open job positions for engineering. So any of you who are thinking of career changing or those who want to guide your children, tell them to go into engineering. 3 million unfilled positions just in the US for engineers. No matter how bad the economy is, this group has had 0% unemployment for over the last decade. You cannot hire or find enough engineers. In fact, they're so hard to recruit. If you ever try to go to a college campus and recruit an engineer, it would look akin to a sports athlete being recruited for the NBA, for NFL football, whatever professional sports league. They get scouted, recruited. We start tracking some of the engineers starting at freshman year by face and what courses they're taking before we hire them when they graduate. They are that difficult to hire. So I'm going to give you just a quick bit. This is not a talk about hiring, but everything usually begins with hiring. If you start to invest in your top of the funnel, who gets in your organization, you start to alter and change who gets in, you will see over time your entire organization will change. So when it comes to hiring engineers, there are 10 schools in the US that draw the world's best talent in both undergrad and grad students. And so 4 of the 10 are on the East Coast. It's MIT, Cornell, Carnegie Mellon, as well as Georgia Tech. We currently recruit the top 1% from the schools. We get close to 5,000 applicants a year, and we hire 10. They're the best of the best. And it took us around 5 years to get to a place where we were attracting and getting acceptances over every other company into NextJump, the company most of you have never heard of, accepting a job with NextJump, coming out of these schools over Google, over Facebook, over whoever you name. So how do we do this? 5 years we spent influencing the influencers. So those are professors and those are other students. 25 interns a summer for 5+ years, and before you know it, they have influence over other students. We fund research grants for the right professors. We know down to the classroom which class matters most. So we succeed, and by 2010, we reach this pinnacle. We're getting the best engineers coming from these top schools into NextJump, and then out of the blue, turnover skyrockets to 40%. 40%, which sounds crazy for most companies, yet in tech, that is typical. The average tenure of an engineer is usually less than 6 months in a company. They move around so much. They get poached and recruited with offers that literally are huge in salary, huge in equity, with tremendous opportunities. So for 2010 and 2011, an average engineer at NextJump was getting recruited by recruiters and other companies offering to double and triple their salary. They start already at 21 years old at 100,000 base. In less than 12 months, they're offered double and triple that to move companies. And we could not fight with money against the poaching of the talent, but we kept investing in culture. And culture investments, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. Culture investments, we continued until we hit a tipping point. And a tipping point comes from developing human beings, bringing and making them their best version of themselves. And physical fitness, nutrition, how you treat the physical vessel absolutely matters in that process. And when we hit this tipping point in the beginning of 2012, we had turnover almost overnight just go right back down to virtually nothing. And it's held for 2.5 years. There's no signal at all of turnover coming back up. And the retention, the loyalty of the staff, through the roof. So just a really quick lesson that we learned on hiring that may be helpful. Most people here at some point will be interviewing or hiring someone, which is to hire someone with a student mindset versus an expert. So it's not about hiring students, but someone with a student mindset. Oftentimes, a lot of hiring focuses on finding the smartest people with incredible drive, incredible hunger. But if you find smart people with incredible drive who are not humble, they will destroy your company. We faced this, and we had to get rid of a huge group. In 2008, we let go of half our engineers because of that exact thing. We found the one trait they lacked, and after all the interviews and all the data, was humility. And what we dug in deeper, what we found was those who were humble had 3 traits that you can look for. They have gratitude versus a sense of entitlement. They have responsibility, meaning when something is wrong, they point inwardly at themselves, versus those who are victims point this way. It's someone else's fault. It's the CEO's fault. It's the industry's fault. It's the time of year fault. It's someone else's fault for them not working out. And the last and probably the most important is the notion of investing in loss. somebody who invests in failure, who invests in pushing themselves out of their comfort zone in order to grow, versus the opposite is someone who knows it all, who plays it safe, who never takes a risk, and so they never grow. So, tips on hiring. Just really quick on Next Jump. I'll just share two things. We have a goal. We call it Building Next Jump as a company, and then we have an audacious goal that's much bigger. And so in building a company, we are looking to build a top 10 global tech company. And to get to a top 10 global tech level, we need to be at 50 billion in revenues. We're at around 2 billion right now. At the rate of growth we have, we will achieve 50 billion in 5 years fast, 10 years slow. And this is a common goal of the company, to build a very large, we're one of the bigger players in e-commerce. Most people will not have heard of it because we build stores within companies. We built a Morgan Stanley e-commerce store, a Bank of America e-commerce store, Cisco e-commerce store. We run them for over 100,000 companies. But the bigger goal that we share in the company is this audacious goal, and a goal to make a difference, of changing the world. And the way that we found that we can do this is by changing workplace culture. When you think of every company out there that's in the for-profit space, they have the most people, they have the most capital, they have the most technology. If they changed their culture, so they built a culture where they would take care of their people, but then for a purpose of actually servicing other human beings, helping the world, you could fix every problem in the world 10 times over, given the amount of resources that sit in for-profit companies. So everything that we do in culture, we give away. People ask, do you sell it? You should sell it. And we tell them, there's something that my mother taught me very early on. You don't give away what you suck at. You give away what you're good at. And so this is what we share. So going back to culture, and what culture is and what culture is not. Culture is not about free food. It's not about having the fanciest office, colored paint and walls. It's not about your happy hours and social activities. It is not about a perks arms race. It's the new income now for most people being hired. Here's your salary and your bonus. Well, what are the perks? That's the new income. And oftentimes, culture is mistaken to build companies with a form of hedonism. It's like a party that's going on. More food, more drinks, more fun social activities, that's great culture. And it is not. It does not lead to anything except being happy in the short term. What we have found, and a lot of research backs this up, is that culture, when built correctly, leads to an outcome of true wealth. Long-term sustained happiness by individuals. And the process, which is what we need to all get focused more on. Not the outcomes, but what are the levers? What is the process that you want to invest in that leads to great outcomes? And there are two things that we found. It's a common thread across almost every research, every data point out there. Human beings need two things above all else. One is this need to continually grow. You grow and grow until you cannot grow anymore. It's never-ending growth. And the second, though, is for a higher purpose. For a purpose of servicing other human beings, for helping other human beings. The sobering thought that you have to think is, when you get to the end of your life, what do you want on your tombstone? Because it's never about how strong you are, how much money you have, how many houses you have, what powerful positions you had. It's always around the impact you had on other people. And that is the way we are wired. So in our company, we took those two things, and we built a very simple phrase. Better me plus better you equals better us, and us being a better world. Every culture initiative built in the company, 50% of our resources and capital and everything goes towards better me programs, 50% towards better you programs. And within that, I'm here to talk more about the health aspects, the fitness aspects. So the oxygen mask theory, why you must take care of yourself before you can take care of others, why you must be selfish before you become selfless. You can go further once you learn how to take care of yourself. So over the years, we spent a lot of time, and typically culture is run out of HR, human resources. And we came up with a different term. We called it human capital engineering. The reason we added the word engineering, in the world of engineering, there's a very simple mantra. You launch quickly, then you iterate like hell. In human resources, it's a little bit different. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, or don't change it. And let's check with legal and compliance. Things move very, very slowly. So we added this term, human capital engineering, and we call it HCE, and we started studying and looking at other frameworks that are out there. And Maslow's hierarchy, of course, comes to mind. Now, Maslow built this framework in 1943 Now, there is a big difference, though, between 1943 and today. And one of the single biggest differences is what we do for work. In 1943, we were very active. The idea of like overeating, idea of like over-nutrition, not moving, sitting sedentary at a desk for 10 hours, that's not work. Well, today, how you are physically set is actually really important. Most of us sit at a desk 8 to 10 hours a day, not moving. And that is not how we were built to do. We're not wired this way. So we came up with a very simple framework where security was at the bottom. And why security is important is when you don't feel safe, you don't push yourself. You don't experiment. Then health, because the physical vessel matters. The growth is the continuous growth of your individual self, all driving towards a higher purpose of helping and servicing other human beings. So we call that better me at the bottom to better me or better you at the top. To give you a little more context, in the field of professional sports, a lot of sports athletes, especially when they're in pro sports, they will have the income and security, they will have their health because that's their job function, and they will have growth because they're constantly improving. But those athletes who lack purpose will always lose their way. When you look at for-profit companies, you've got the notion that in order to get paid so I can take care of my family, what do you have to give up? You must give up your health. Growing is basically on your own, and if you want to do something to help other people, do it on the weekend, do it in your own time. Versus you look at nonprofits, they have the opposite. They spend their entire lives working to service and help other people, make the world better, but they have no security. They can't even feed their families. They have no health, and they definitely do not grow. And so this is the problem that we have to fix. So I'm going to talk about coming back to fitness, coming back to nutrition, but at two levels. Level one being more the how do we get a company of 200 people, of which 75% are engineers. Most of them never stepped foot in a gym. And their nutrition literally consisted, over here is a lot of water drinking, there was a lot of Mountain Dew and Red Bull drinking. And that's what they did. And so the odds of actually getting them to go to the gym consistently, eating healthy, change their entire way of looking and thinking about fitness and nutrition, the odds are so odd against us. I would argue that if we could do it, anybody can do this. And then at level two, we'll talk about how we're now integrating and experimenting using physical fitness programs with mental and emotional development programs. So that's the most cutting edge things that we're working on right now. So going into what we did, exercise, the notion of healthier employees perform better. Very simple notion. And so we built gyms in all our offices, and everyone competes, and I'll go into more details of how we got to where we are. Nutrition. We were very strategic with nutrition. Every nutritionist we talked to always asked one common question. Did you eat breakfast? Did you eat breakfast? Did you eat breakfast? So being an engineer, we saw the pattern, and we said, it must be the most important thing in nutrition. We must get every employee to eat breakfast. So what do? We made every meal for breakfast free and no other meal free. And breakfast, by the way, is the cheapest meal to service as a company. We made that the only free meal, and free food, this bizarre thing I see in conferences. You look at it, employees, free food just gets gobbled up. And in fact, we had to lock the fridges by 11 o'clock saying, you know what, you're starting to border on lunch. We don't lock it anymore, but to get employees to eat breakfast, we literally had to say breakfast is breakfast and then there's lunch. And that's what we started with. And for years, we just focused only on breakfast. And what we found was that it became a ritual. Every employee ate breakfast every single day at the company. Then we added healthy free lunches. But the only way you get a healthy free lunch is if you go to the gym and work out in a class that we offer at lunch. Yoga classes, boxing classes. You take a class, you get a free healthy lunch. Otherwise, you pay for your own lunch. And then eventually we added dinner. Healthy dinners, but this was around community. Eating together was the aspect of it. So every meal was strategically treated of how it could be engineered into the environment. So how and what drove everything, though, was physical fitness. How do you get someone who never stepped foot in the gym to go to the gym on a regular basis? Now, the question of regular comes up. What does regular mean? Most fitness experts said, Charlie, you got to get people to work out 5 days a week, minimum. Maybe 4, that's the bare minimum. And if you don't hit 4, it's not even worth having a program. And we said, these people never stepped in the gym. Every single person would fail before we even begin. We're going to set a much lower bar, but we think it's realistic. Twice a week, consistently, we want people to go to the gym. Twice a week. Now, fitness experts said, No point in having the program. That's not going to work. But we said, this is what we're going to do. And we found over time this pattern. I don't know if you know this, but the human red blood cell dies and regenerates every 90 days. If you can find the right habits, the right rituals, the right things built into your environment or your culture, and it lasts for 90 days, that happens weekly and twice a week, you will find that people change. You become a different person in a course of 90 days. So when we started building our gym programs going way back, we built gyms, invested a ton in every office, and at best we were able to get 5% of the employees going to work out regularly. Well, we ran a lot of experiments. Like I said, we iterated like hell. Everything we launched, we iterated. The fact that it might fail was less relevant. It was a question of what are we going to iterate to make it work? And we pushed and pushed and pushed. And for the last almost 4 years now, we've been averaging 90% of our employees regularly work out. And the average workout in a week for a person is 3.5 times in a week. Huge success. So we'll take you through some of the key lessons that we learned. One of the first lessons was that providing access, convenient access, was important. And you'll see this common thread, most important to the top performers of the company. We first offered free gym memberships. Every employee got free gym memberships. And the most perverse thing happened. Every top performing employee never went, but every bottom performer always went. In fact, I had many arguments with an employee saying, I need you in this meeting, and they'd say, Charlie, I can't go. I got to go to the gym. There's a class I signed up for. I have to go. And I tell them, but I really need you in this meeting. It's for the company. And they would say, but you promote health. You want us to work out. I signed up for the class. I have to go. And this happened enough times. Like I was literally pulling my hair, could not believe this was happening. So we went, and we found that once we built gyms in the office, it wasn't that the low performers didn't work out. They kept working out, worked out even more. But the top performers started to go because it was easy for them. The notion of re-engineering the environment, turning it around so that it's easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing. But many of you here may say, well, I don't have the budget to build a gym. I cannot convince my senior leadership to build a gym. I can't afford that kind of capital investment. Well, it's not how we started. We started with literally $200, and that's how we built our gym. We took our largest conference room, and we said, starting at 6 p.m., the conference room is closed. You can't be using it for meetings. It's going to turn into a gym. We went to the gym, found personal trainers, and we negotiated a discounted rate, and the employees are just pitching in at a lowered rate now, and we used the conference room literally as a gym. And we spent $200 buying weights and rubber bands and what the trainers needed, and we would literally do lunges around the conference table, we would do sprints around the table, and that is how we built our gym for years. And employees worked out, and it was convenient. It was right there. It was great for the personal trainers. They got paid more than they made at the gym because the gym usually takes a huge cut. Everyone got a benefit for $200. So for those of you who think you can't convince your senior management, you can't afford yourself to put the investment in to build a gym, I know you have $200. Looking at other things that we learned, lessons we learned. In a lot of these things we learned how things failed before we learned how things worked. Notion of creating competitions. Oftentimes, incentives, throwing gift cards, throwing money, throwing points. A lot of people throw money at the problem. And we found that in the short run, you might get success, but very quickly it tapers off and never comes back. It did not work. But the sense of competition, what's innate in all of us, and especially most people, no matter how old and young and experienced, we like to compete. And especially when you hire the right people who are driven, who want to win, competition is very easy to trigger. So competition was important, but there was something key in competition, which is a scoreboard. If you don't know the score, it's very difficult to compete. Do you ever go to a bowling alley and keep bowling with your eyes closed? You wouldn't know how to make your game better. You wouldn't know how to compete. You need a scoreboard. So one of our engineers one day, over the weekend, literally built a fitness portal where everyone in the company is broken into 5 teams, and you can see which team is winning on a regular basis, meaning did the team member go to the gym regularly? Meaning did they work out twice minimum in the week? And so if you haven't worked out at all, it has an X. If you worked out once, it has a yellow check. And if you worked out twice or more, you get a green check. And you can see by individual who's gone and who hasn't gone. Now, one of the greatest benefits that we saw, a side benefit, was what team members did to help each other win. The people who went to the gym the most, the top performers of the gym, actually started identifying the lowest performers on their team. People who were so scared to go to the gym, unfamiliar with the gym, and they would go and mentor them and help them, show them how to use the batting cage, the rock climbing wall, show them how to play ping pong. They would find a way to teach them how to use the gym. We built trainers without even meaning to build trainers in our own employees. So competition did some very interesting things for us. But as competition continues, and you may find this if you ever run a competition, things fatigue. You get complacency. It gets to a point where you hit a ceiling. And the ceiling we hit was 50% of the employees going to the gym regularly was the highest we could get. And everyone believed that was a ceiling, that it was unrealistic to expect anything more. Well, recognition programs, when done correctly and celebrated in front of the company, can have very impactful influences in the company. So we have a program called the President's Award. It's for breaking new records. And the President's Award, we give 2 metal steel balls, so balls of steel, to the captain or the individual who breaks ceilings in the company, and $10,000 in the next paycheck. Pretty big award. So one team lead, his name is John Nellen. He decided, my birthday's in July actually, it was just last week. So he decided 1 week, on the week that my birthday was on, that as a gift to me, he was gonna get his team to work out 100%. And so he went, and he just did it. I didn't think it was possible. He did it, and 100% of the team worked out on his team alone. In the company staff meeting, he's in Boston, I'm in New York, we zoom the camera in, his face turns blushing red as we hand him 2 metal steel balls and $10,000. Everyone in the company saw this. So this is what happened the very next week. So once the ceiling was broken, this is Tuesday. This is Wednesday. This is Thursday. And by Friday, every single person in the company worked out twice a week, minimum. And suddenly, the new norm became 100%. And in fact, we had perverse things occur. In fact, 100% was almost seemingly too easy to hit. People started competing on how many workouts. It got a little out of control. 2 was a good goal. We kept that at 2, even though we average higher. Once the numbers started getting higher and higher, the pressure was literally too much that it started to have a negative effect on work. But 100% now is the new norm. Using data, and using data in interesting ways. When it comes to teammanship and competition, so I'm a big fan. I spent a lot of time in Boston, so Red Sox is the example I use. And the Red Sox are winning, I think, in this example, 11-1. So the losing team has no incentive to compete. Okay, so you're not big Red Sox fans? But this is totally by accident. I don't know if COL stands for Colorado. That was totally by accident. So what ends up happening is when the losing team continues to lose, people eventually say, we can't win. So why compete? Why try? So we have a lot of data. Every single person going to the gym checked in every single week. So one of the engineers over a weekend literally just coded and said, I'm going to build an algorithm, call it FitRank. Who is going to the gym the most, and ranking them on a 5-star basis relative to everybody else. And everyone got a ranking. And suddenly we had a system to score every team, and we can see one team was incredibly strong in FitRank while the other teams weren't. And so when we had to do a reshuffling of the teams, we could even the FitRank across all teams. So every team had a chance to win. And once again, competition picked back up. This is the last insight I have in the fitness front. The notion of investing more for your top people. No matter what we did, we found top people still prioritize working, driving revenue in the company above going to the gym. And they're the ones that missed. And yet every program we built, we talk about trying to get our best even better. They were the ones that we invest for. The reason we put all this investment in. We want them healthier because we know they'll perform better. And so what ended up working was personal trainers. And not just anyone, we found the best of the best. People who trained, A-Rod from the Yankees. People who, Hungarian national ping pong champion, to individuals who coach professional MMA fighters for boxing lessons. We have 20 personal trainers now as consultants on staff. And they teach classes at noon, but in the evenings, they're only offered to the top performers of the company, as voted by the employees. Free training sessions in the peak and prime time they work out. It's an appointment on your calendar. an appointment on your calendar for top performers, they go. And they don't want to waste it, so they end up going. And so the graph at the bottom is an individual, I'll tell you more about Lokia shortly, was not going to the gym. And suddenly with trainers, she's going. The comments we get back, are these comments of, oh my God, the opportunity to learn from a world champion in ping pong. That's amazing. I'm going to go. So we invest more always for the top people. So testimonials, the kind of feedback we heard. People said, I used to get sick frequently. After starting to exercise regularly, I noticed I hardly ever get sick. The quality of my sleep is much better. I find that I fall asleep quickly, sleep well, and wake up refreshed. I used to work 9-to-5 job and be exhausted by the afternoon. And next jump, even in a 10-hour day, I feel energized and focused throughout the day. I found working out in a gym provides community, collaboration with colleagues you wouldn't interact with. No matter who I spoke to about next jump, they could not believe how ahead of the curve we are. They all mentioned that we are running a program akin to a sports team. And this is the best one I love. The fitness center, nutritionists, classes, and competition form a comprehensive, impressive program. We know the program is working out. My son is twice the man he used to be. I have hundreds of letters from mothers of our employees. When your mother calls you, she asks you, are you sleeping? Are you eating well? Are you being healthy? The mothers of our employees love me more than any other human being out there. I have more notes that sound like that, where they talk about how their son, their daughter, is a different person. They're different when they come home. They're different when they interact. They're different when they talk on the phone. They are different people, better people. So I talked about level 1, and that to me is the basics, the foundation. Just work out, just eat healthy. I'm going to talk about 5 areas that we're now experimenting, of integrating this whole notion. Someone mentioned this earlier, the idea of your whole self. Most of us live very divided lives. We're a different person at home than we are at work. We're a different person sometimes in the gym than we are somewhere else. We live divided lives, and when you live a divided life, it's like trying to train like 6 different people at the same time. When you live a whole self life, you train anywhere, whether it's in the gym, whether it's at home, whether it's on culture, whether it's on revenue, it impacts everything else. There's an individual by the name of Jim Lear. I'm assuming being in health, many of you may have heard of him. Written 18 bestseller books, runs an amazing institute called the Human Performance Institute. He spent some time in Spain with bullfighters, with matadors. And the time he spent with them, he asked them, how are you able to stand in front of a charging bull where they can smell your fear and be so confident? And they talked about how they train. And they train in what they call the matador walk. Your chest is out, and you're walking with extreme confidence, and you practice. And when you train physically on the outside, it changes you on the inside. And that is something we have seen. Whether you're training outside in or inside out, you are the same person. So I'll talk about 5 different experiments we're running. One of them is around balance, physical balance, the right and left side of your body, all the way to character balances. The notion of who you are showing up with common patterns and themes everywhere we look at. The notion of investing in loss, playing out of your comfort zone, whether it's in physical fitness or whether it is in your career development. The notion of how to use recovery best, as well as the notion of intensity versus consistency. So in physical balance, and balance is the foundation of everything you need in physical activity. Besides few sports like pole vaulting, where you need to be stronger on one side, most sports require agility. You need to be able to equally go left or right at the same speed with the same impact. In tennis, most of us are great at the forehand, but we all suck at the backhand. And you ever see someone who sucks at the backhand? They overdo it and hit backhands and forehands, and anybody who's decent at tennis can beat them just by lobbing the ball out of their reach. You need to be agile on both. And oftentimes, the whole world's been filled with strength finders and focus on strengths, yet when you don't have balance, injury occurs. So in physical fitness, there's an individual we got to know very well by the name of Peter Gorman. Peter Gorman invented the heart rate monitor, Polar Tech. Amazing individual, and his new company now is building a product called the OptoGate. And it's in Olympic, training facilities, professional sports. So we put him, of course, into our office as well. And this equipment, it's pretty cool equipment. It's laser driven, and it measures in real time your physical imbalance by percentage left and right. And most of us are imbalanced over time. And so the question of being imbalanced is not the issue. Ultimately, are you trending better or are you trending worse? And what they have found is this: when your imbalance from one side to the next gets to 15%, you're prone for injury. You're going to get hurt. And so you want to start trending the right way, and we have ways to actually correct and work on this imbalance. But you first have to help someone get self-aware of it, and then start to measure over time if they're getting better or worse. And so this is something we're doing in conjunction with another type of training, the notion of character balances. So character balances in this example, all of us have some level of confidence and some level of humility, but it tends to be imbalanced. And if you are incredibly confident, say a confidence level 8, but your humility is at level 2, that by definition is called arrogance. Yet some of us will say, you know what, I'm a really good person. I'm really humble. Well, you're so humble that you're humble number 9, but your confidence at a 2, it's what they call insecurity. And what we have found is at the point of stress, when it matters most, an arrogant person will make an arrogant call. An insecure person will make an insecure call. And it is consistently the wrong call. We tend to go, and no different than, when you play tennis, your forehand is strong, you're going to hit the backhand with the forehand. The same thing occurs on the emotional front. We tend to skew towards our strength to the point where we make the wrong calls, not realizing there are 2 ways to go. And when you don't have this foundation of balance, every other form of training doesn't work. You're building everything on an unstable foundation. So in this work with Jim Lehrer, he spent time with us talking about how character is a muscle. Think of how many of us will say, well, I am who I am. That's my character. And you can't change me. When you think of it as a muscle, it's one of the best ways to look at character. You're telling me you can't become humbler? You can't become more confident? You can't become more resilient? You can't become more vulnerable? You can't become kinder? Of course you can. But like muscles, if you don't exercise it, it atrophies. So Jim came to us and gave us this list, a very long list, of 50 character traits that you must score every employee by. Now, in the business world, and being focused on practical application, 50 was too much. So we applied an 80-20 rule and found the top 10 most important character traits and started to score and measure employees for 6 months. And we found 2 traits, though, that rose above all rest. So we took another 80-20 rule, dropped 8, and focused on 2 above all else. And that was confidence and humility. We found that this was the foundational character attributes for all human beings. When you can get balanced in this, you can work on everything else. And so when you look at someone who's confident, they tend to speak up easily. They tend to be aggressive, courageous, and optimistic. Versus someone who's humble tends to listen better. They tend to be more patient, vulnerable, and disciplined. But the problem is when it occurs at the wrong time. So we train people, those who are arrogant in the company, in 1-hour meetings, they are allowed to speak in the last 15 minutes. Those who are insecure, they must speak up in the first 15 minutes. The notion of practicing the other side, exercise it so you get better. Everyone's got little cards in their pockets. This exact sheet I just showed you, pocket-sized cards to remind you, at the point of stress or when your guard is down, focus on your practice ground of developing stronger muscles. For me, if you can't tell, I'm more on the arrogant side. So I practice patience. I practice vulnerability. I practice discipline wherever I can. The notion of who you are and kind of this whole notion of know thyself. Most of us think we know who we are, but the reality is we don't. Because the true version of yourself shows up under stress or when your guard is down. Which is why when you come home from a long day at work and how you treat your kids and how you treat your spouse, that is who you are. When you have to make a decision and the winning point for your team is on you, what you do, that is who you are. When you haven't slept for 3 days and someone wants to give you critical feedback on how to get better, how humble are you? That is who you are. That is the true score of who you are, and that is the starting point for you to train. So what we have found is this notion of you is you. You are the same person that shows up everywhere. And when you start to understand that, you can not only identify where your imbalances lie faster, you get to train with everything. And if you ever see a sports athlete, the best athletes look for every opportunity to train. They will train. So there's an individual I'll talk more about, Josh Waitzkin, chess champion, martial artist champion, and the way he would train patience, because when you play chess or you play poker, let me play poker here, patience is very important in the game of poker. But you can't practice patience only at the poker table. Everybody else is trying to be patient too. It's very difficult. Find the longest buffet line. Take that line when you're starving. When you're at the elevator, instead of pressing the button multiple times, wait and be the last one to enter. Find every way to train and practice. So what we have found was when people are stressed, whether it is in fitness, when you're getting stressed through interval training or through weight training, whether it's being stressed because you're being trained by a presentation coach or by your leader in revenue or your mentor in culture, we have the ability to take evaluations from every bucket and then use them to identify and then to train. I'll give you a couple examples. There's an individual, I won't use real names, but her name is Mary, so not real name, but. So the physical fitness trainer sent me an evaluation of Mary and said what Mary does is comes to a 1-hour workout, very excited to work out, and will say, give me a hard workout. I'm dying to work out really hard today. And as the workout gets harder, she starts to back off. She starts to giggle, and she quickly disappears from the workout as if she's not even there. And I read the evaluation, and I was like, you want to read the evaluation written by her revenue manager? They sound identical. There's another individual by the name of Gary, once again, not real names, but real people. The physical fitness trainer told me that this guy is the most physically fit guy you have in the company. He can do a 22-inch vertical jump, yet he's the most mentally weak individual I've ever met. He comes in the gym, wants to work out hard, and next thing you know, he looks at something and says, that looks difficult. God, I'm not sure I can do it. It looks really, really difficult. He talks himself out of it to the point where he's so paralyzed, he cannot even lift the weight. The mental mind has the ability to drive what your physical body does. And by the way, this is exactly the same way he codes and builds products in engineering. We found this connection, and we use the connection to train and identify and tell them, when you punch that boxing bag harder, when you go and push yourself out of your comfort zone in presentation coaching, you will see it show up in every other place in your life. Josh Wakeskin, I just mentioned, amazing individual, someone who's become a very close friend. And he became world chess champion and then changed gears and said, I'm going to be #1 in martial arts in the world. And think about that crazy goal, right? Chess champion thinking he's going to go and do martial arts. And as he went and mastered and became world champion in martial arts, he wrote a book, one of the best books I found on learning, how human beings learn. It's called The Art of Learning. But the biggest insight in the book was this, was that growth occurs in levels. We level up to different levels. But before you level up, you do worse before you do better. And oftentimes we can't grapple and accept that worse. So we deny, we're angry about it, and you go and start the game again somewhere else. You just live your life repeating the same thing over and over. Versus when you start to embrace the fact, like in physical sports, you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, try things that actually do worse before you get better. We found that in most human beings, the single biggest area that we do worse, it's psychological, it's emotional in nature. We cannot deal with failure. We cannot deal with the fear of failing and what it means for us as a brand, what it means for other people looking at us. And if we start to accept that, you can start to see failure as a platform for growth. So we started to use this in physical fitness, and we found correlations in how people grew in their careers. When the trainers now train you, they will ask you through every interval, every rep, do you want to upgrade or downgrade? All the way through for an hour. And it almost sounds annoying. Do you want to upgrade or downgrade? Do you want to upgrade or downgrade? Everyone starts by upgrading. By the end, people downgrade a lot. But we have found that those individuals who are growing fastest, no matter what, will upgrade all the way through. They will upgrade all the way through. And some people will say, well, physical fitness, you tire out. Don't you think that they don't have any more in them? There's a crazy insight I heard that how many of us have gone home feeling physically depleted, like we have nothing left in us? Yet the reality is this. You know, in the caveman days, if we're that depleted, the mountain lion is going to eat you. It's over. Anybody here who thinks you're so depleted you cannot move, you have to realize you have enough energy to run a marathon. We are not that depleted. The mountain lion would never be able to eat us because we have that much energy still inside. And we have found those individuals who upgrade do better in the office as well. We also found that when people are paired together, it's interesting. When you get the wrong pairing, both people perform worse. They kind of talk themselves into how difficult this is. It's not going to work out. You get the right pairing, no matter how tired someone is, both people upgrade their game. In fitness, as well as revenue, as well as at home, you name it, it occurs. Jim Lear, as I mentioned, this amazing graph. This graph, I think, is one of the most interesting and easiest things to know. Most people here, probably from the medical industry, will know this, because if you see a straight line in the hospital, you know that's not good. This is living. Living is stress and recovery. Stress, energy out, as in the pain we face in life, failing, is the stimulus for growth. Recovery is actually, when energy comes in, is when growing occurs. And a lot of people like to stay in these happy states of recovery forever. And you don't realize you're becoming a vegetable. You're going to be nobody, uninteresting, never growing. Well, there's some people who are so induced by stress forever. You will burn out. You cannot have stress without recovery. They both go together. So we have started taking moments of recovery in physical fitness and doing the most unusual thing. When you go to an interval and your heart rate goes up, and then when you're recovering, your heart rate's coming down. We said, what are things emotionally that drive heart rates up in business? And one thing came to mind: performance evaluations. Who doesn't feel their heart rate go up as your manager, who sometimes you never talk to, comes down once a year to give you the critical feedback of why you suck? What you can do better, what you must work on. And so we started to take performance evaluations. This is our evaluation process. They get ranked on culture as well as revenue. It's a contribution system which drives the salary as well as bonusing, where it's about this give and take. Whatever you take from the company, sort of like caveman, you eat a lot of food, you have to contribute back what you ate. If you take a lot of salary, you run a larger team, you have to contribute back at least an equal amount if you want to stay at the same pay, more if you want to get increases. And we have people now starting to get evaluations during their workout. It's very early, but what we're finding is this: they're more reflective, they don't get angry, and they actually accept their evaluations in a thoughtful manner and act on it faster, because their heart rate is naturally going down, and that's when they're reading their evaluations. The last experiment running came from preschools. If you want to learn how to build amazing culture, amazing environments, amazing systems, I encourage you to go look at preschools. Nancy Shulman is arguably the #1 individual in this country around preschools. Built the top school in New York and is running another one right now. Written a different couple books around this. And the notion why preschools are important, it's all about environment. It's all about setting up the physical and every other environment. And when it comes to developing character, when's the last time you got trained in confidence? The last time you got trained in being kind? It's when you're 3, 4, and 5. You should be trained until you die, but that's where the most training occurs right now. So we took insights from preschool, and Nancy said this. She said, they may not like you at the moment, but they're going to love you in the long run. Establish routines, be consistent. Consistency is at the foundation. I'll give you an example. The example she uses in spelling. So when someone learns how to spell at 3, 4, 5, it's basically a guessing game, spelling. And the kid writes up something and looks like gibberish and says, is this right? And you want to say, no, that's wrong, or you want to say, good job. She said, there's only one response you want to give: looks good. And I was like, but it's wrong. She's like, looks good. And the reason is spelling. Learning to spell is learning to practice guessing. Adults just guess better. And so if you can consistently get them to practice guessing, they will over time be amazing spellers. And so the notion of consistency, where we reverse everything in life. We tend to put intensity at the bottom, consistency at top, when it has to be reversed. So I'll give you some examples. In nutrition, you haven't eaten well for a while, crash diet versus eat breakfast every day. In exercise, haven't worked out in a while, I'm going to go for a long run. Yeah, you might get injured, but that's what you tend to do. 30 minutes twice a week is much better. When it comes to mentorship, how many people get mentored quarterly or annually? Imagine getting mentored daily with a talking partner, or weekly in teams of 4, a situational workshop, which I'm going to run one actually after this event for anybody who's interested here. Giving. We tend to be very generous people in the holidays, but take the holidays out, we're not so giving. We built a program called MSD, Make Someone's Day, Random Acts of Kindness, twice a week. Go find strangers, go find people in need, help them and document it twice a week. And that, by the way, is more impactful in making someone kind. So Jim Lear said this: no change in your people equals no change in your business. When you get transformational change in your people, you're going to see transformational change in your business. The notion that culture is hard to measure, the impact of it, what's the ROI, what metrics do you look at? I'm going to walk you through primary results, so case studies of people, as well as secondary results in the numbers. So on the primary level, I'm talking about a senior engineer who literally went from a regular engineer to basically doing the CEO's job. So this is Lokia, who I mentioned before. She's head of revenue. 6 years ago, she graduated out of college. We trained her as an engineer, and she was in very poor health, even though we tried to get her to go to the gym. And then we trained her to also be head of revenue. In the same window that she is running all the revenue of the business, she lost 30 pounds. She looks like a different person. Her husband pulled me aside and said, my wife is doing the CEO's job. What are you doing? So I'm here in places like this. And she lost so much weight. She's so physically fit. Her eating habits have changed. Her physical fitness routines have changed. The two happen side by side. We have dozens and dozens of stories like this. And as those add up, what ends up happening is you see employee loyalty. You see people actually changing. The most common phrase you see in the company is, that was the old me. This is the new me. You see engagement where the word love gets used with work. We use the word like when it comes to jobs and work. Most people don't say, I love my job. I like my job. Love is difficult to use at work. Revenue numbers, growing faster than before. Our turnover goes from 40% to 1%. People saying, I love my job, goes to 90%. We start receiving awards, leadership awards from McKinsey. A team of professors at Harvard did a 3-year study studying companies on this planet that have the best and strongest cultures. And we got placed in the top 3. And yes, nobody had heard of NextJump, except the other 2 companies were bigger and more well-known. But awards are coming in, results are coming in, and the revenue side. Our revenue was growing 25% year over year for 5-year average. For the last 2 years, it's been growing 100% and accelerating. This is a little bit more detail. Red represents revenue goals being missed. Green represents revenue goals being hit. We're going on over 2 years now of exceeding and accelerating revenue. But the most important part is this. It's run by a team 2 levels away from me, which is what we call CEO -2. Lokia and her team are driving the revenue, and that is difficult to do. To train leaders who can take over your company and run it better than you are at a faster clip than you ever did, so you can coach and build other programs. And then one of the more interesting things is turnover went down from 40 to 1%. And for 6, almost 9 months, no change in the results. And that's where people give up. When it comes to changing people, there's an arc. At the beginning of the arc, unlike machines, it's actually awkward, painful. Everything is wrong, not working. And until you push and invest to the other side, you will not see the results. We have this phrase in the company, build a company that would make your mother and father proud. Oftentimes, whether you lead an organization or you can influence the leadership in the organization, people wonder, what is the element that can help drive this? A lot of times, people will say, well, I heard a great speaker, I read a great book, I read a case study, I know a company, and that becomes your driver for change. And we find that copying someone else ends up usually getting you to the wrong place. So what is that North Star? That North Star that makes you do the right thing. At the point when you don't know what is right and wrong, how do you make that right decision? And what we found was this, for all of us, if you build a company, build an organization that will make your mother and father proud. Fathers are proud of us when we succeed, when we achieve, when we graduate, when we get promoted. But mothers are proud of us when we are happy and help others. And think about it where if you're happy and a really good person but still living in your basement of your parents' house, the fathers aren't so happy. You need to please both. And this has been the driving force for 20 years of how we did everything we did. This is our best thinking. We see ourselves as a teaching organization like a teaching hospital, sharing and giving everything away. And we focus on this Boy Scout rule, be the example first. Make sure you dog food whatever you're going to give to your guests, because you don't want to serve guests food that you haven't even tried yourselves. So the most common phrase I hear at the company at NextJump is this notion of I'm proud to be a NextJumper. When a company builds a great culture, the first thing you might hear is my company cares for me. But care is a lower bar than proud. When someone is proud, they hear outside validation from some other people, strangers often, of what a great company you have. They take care of you, they take care of the community, how great it is. But if you know the inside, under the hood, it's all broken and rotten, you're not going to feel proud. The standard is highest when an employee starts to use the word proud. So, thank you.
Am I on? Thank you, Charlie. Okay, here's the deal. We've got breakouts in 15 minutes, so if you want to get in one, you better get. The only thing that's going to be here is the zip codes trump DNA code. So if you're going to be in that one, you may stay. Otherwise, you must leave. Got it?
Okay, so I think I probably ran over the Q&A time, so I'm running a situational workshop which is based on bringing your situations to see how we can give you some insight and help. And so feel free to join me there. Also, Elise Pierpont, who joined me from Next Jump, she's right here in the front. You just stand up for a sec. She heads up our branding and heads up our academy where we share our insights for free. So please feel free to bug her if you have more questions too. Thank you.
Great job.
So we really instituted with the foundation, the College Health Foundation and other folks, to really educate parents, and not only in the school but also at home, about changes in how do we eat better, what are our options. So parents are really saying, what can we do then to address that? And those are part of the conversations. How do we make sure that our kids really expend a lot of energy, just run like crazy, and go to the playground, go to the park, and do that. And that is because of the conversation that we've had about how do we address the issue of lack of exercise and physical activity. We have a lot to learn. As an organization, we have been doing this work for a long time, but really the more you talk with the folks and how they address this, the issues of health in the schools, healthy habits, and how do we take that out in a broad scale to our communities. I know there's some folks here that have experienced that directly or indirectly. And so for us, it's really is about how do we share experiences, learn what other folks are doing, what's working, problems that people have had. We're very good at community outreach. That's how we grew out of. But how do you blend community outreach and health of our community, but do it in a respectful way? So we don't have to tell people what to do, but how do we share experiences to do it better?